Hello, everyone. My name is Shalu Hasaram. I am from Henley and Partners. I'm based in Singapore. We are very happy to do this webinar today. And I just wanted to start first by explaining, what Henley and Partner does. Just to give you a brief background, we have two divisions in Henley and Partners. One is the private client division, and one is the government advisory. I am from the private client division. And we also have a very thriving government advisory service where we have raised more than US 15 billion in foreign direct investment. We're truly global in every essence. We have more than 60 offices worldwide. And we actually have more than 40 residence and citizenship programs. But I am here specifically today to talk about the US EB-5 program, because as you may be aware, this particular program has actually come under a lot of spotlight ever since Trump made the announcement that he was launching his gold card. But nothing actually has materialized, although a website has been put up to just take an expression of interest, but we don't have any concrete details of that, of the gold card. But, even besides the gold card, there has been a lot of, attention, especially on international students. And first, there was basically the standoff with Harvard University. And then on top of that, they had the foreign embassies were instructed by the Trump administration to actually, halt student visa interviews. Although that has actually resumed, right? We are still seeing tremendous social media scrutiny. So what does this exactly mean for a lot of the investors who are looking to do EB-5? Well, first of all, when clients are actually have so much uncertainty in the EB-5 world, right? What I actually tell them to do is that at Henley and Partners, we actually provide a truly comprehensive service to the client. So not only do we look at EB-5, we look at the entire gamut of the EB-5 processing. And I would actually have to say, in Asia, where I'm actually based, a number of the clients actually do EB-5 for education of their children. And it's actually been the number one reason that has actually driven EB-5. So much so that Henley and Partners has actually launched our education service within our Henley and Partners team. So we actually have a lot of international advisors from like North America, Australia, and we do markets of different countries like US, UK, Australia, New Zealand. But as you may be aware, in spite of whatever is happening in the uncertainty within student visas and application, I would have to still say the US education is unmatched, and it is probably the most preferred education destination for a number of my clients. So with that, right, I just wanted to actually share with you, I want to take this opportunity to share with you more about what Henley and Partner Education does. So we actually provide a very, very holistic service within, not only do we do the placement for children, for the children into, universities and colleges, we actually even start very young. And I've actually, done quite a few applications for children as young as 10 years and 13 years of age. And it actually complements very, very well with the EB-5 program, because there is a trend that I'm actually seeing with EB-5 is that although the normal application for an EB-5 is where the parents are the main applicant and the children are below 21 are the dependents, I'm starting to see a trend where a lot of parents are starting to plan very early, and they're actually doing it for their children just as a minor. So I think a lot of people might not be aware that EB-5 is actually one of the only programs where a minor can be the main applicant. And, I've actually done for minors as young as 13, 12-year-olds, right? Where the parents really want to give them a head start in life. And I think this is actually one of the main reasons why I tell the parents to actually look at EB-5, because if you are going to take the current day in and day out of Trump, and his attention grabbing headline every day, it gives a lot of parents a lot of anxiety and a lot of tension. And I say you can actually eradicate that. Really, literally, you can actually eliminate that by looking at the EB-5. And why are you looking at the EB-5? Because the EB-5 is actually something that has been passed into legislation by Congress. The EB-5 was actually reauthorized in the year 2022 under the Biden administration. And we are actually, seeing that Congress is the only one that is allowed to actually, change any immigration laws or actually propose any immigration laws. So that's why even with Trump coming on board with this gold card, it would be very hard to actually just replace EB-5, because EB-5 is already passed into law and it is going to be here for till the year 2027. So when I tell this to parents, it obviously gives them a lot of comfort, knowing that. And then on top of that, I have to say the kind of efficiency we are seeing in terms of processing of the applications has been excellent. Two of my clients recently got their approvals in as fast as 7 months. So, I'm really here to tell you EB-5 is actually a very, very good solution for, a lot of what is happening going on. So even though there is a lot of uncertainty in the market, I also feel there's tremendous noise. And sometimes you need to be able to cut through the noise. And that is where we are here to actually guide the client throughout the entire process. So with that, I actually want to, end my presentation. I actually just want to say before I introduce the next speaker, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to actually put that in the chat box, and I'm happy to answer that in the next, at the end of after all the speakers have spoken. So my next speaker, I'm going to introduce you to, is Jessica Ng. She's actually from Can-Am Enterprises. She's vice president at Can-Am Enterprises. And so one of the most important aspects of EB-5, a lot of clients would ask us, is actually where that investment of 800,000 is going into. And I will let Jess actually share further on that. Jess.
Thank you so much, Shalu, for the very kind introduction. Let me just try and pull up my screen over here. 1 second. Hi everyone, I'm Jessica Ng from Can-Am Enterprises. I'm based in Singapore, covering the Southeast Asian market. So this webinar really couldn't be more timely, especially given what's happening in the US immigration landscape. We also have George, who is a very experienced US immigration attorney, who I'm definitely looking forward to hear his insights on that front. But despite all the headline news that we are hearing about the US right now, we have actually seen a spike in interest and demand for the EB-5 program. This is especially so after the announcement from President Trump about the potential launch of the Gold Card. Nothing is really set in stone yet, but what we know about the Gold Card is that it will be a 5 million donation amount, and that will be going to reduce the national debt. The EB-5 program is very different. The EB-5 program only requires a minimum investment amount of $800,000. This is a very significantly lower amount, which is also one of the reasons why many investors have accelerated their decision-making process on moving forward with their EB-5 application. We have a lot of parents making these investments for their children, which is what Shalu has mentioned earlier on. A lot of the children are actually studying in the US right now on an F1 student visa, looking to graduate in the next 1 to 2 years, or who are on their OPT right now. We also have a very big group of investors who are currently H-1B work visa holders. So the EB-5 program is particularly attractive for these applicants based in the US because they're able to enjoy the benefits of concurrent filing. So once they submit their petition, they're able to do the adjustment of status change and gain instant legal status to remain in the US. And within a short period of time, 4 to 6 months, they will receive what we call the work and travel document, and basically enjoying the benefits of a green card at a much earlier stage. I also want to emphasize that the EB-5 program is backed by federal legislation. So the program was reauthorized in 2022 under the Reform and Integrity Act, and this will be valid through till September 2027. So for investors who filed their petitions before September 2026, their applications will be grandfathered and protected under this law. So even if there were future policy changes that's going to be introduced after that point, they will not be impacted. We're also happy to share that, we have been seeing a strong wave of approvals, like what Shalu mentioned earlier on. This is definitely a positive sign that USCIS is actively moving forward with adjudications and that the EB-5 program continues to function effectively. So I'm sure, if you reach out to Shalu, she'll be more than happy to share firsthand stories of her clients who receive conditional green card application approvals within, as fast as 7 to 8 months. So be sure to reach out to her and hear all these, amazing stories. We, Can-Am, have been in this immigration investment business for a very long time now. We are founded in 1987 and we shifted our focus entirely to the EB-5 Immigrant Investor Visa program and helped more than 5,000 families immigrate to the US through this program. Our company is headquartered in New York, but because a lot of our investors are based out of Asia, so we have offices here in Singapore, China, India, and Vietnam. Can-Am is the oldest and the most successful regional center operator in the EB-5 industry. We are proud to share that all the projects that Can-Am has launched and submitted to USCIS for approval were all 100% approved. This means that all our projects have met with the EB-5 program requirements, and more importantly, they meet with the job creation requirements that ultimately help to safeguard the permanent green card for our investors. At Can-Am, all our EB-5 investments are structured as loan-based investments into commercial projects. So this means these investments are very clear and defined loan term. Upon maturity, the investors' capital will be repaid back to them. As with any commercial project, there will definitely be, risk involved, which is why we, Can-Am, have always taken a very conservative approach in structuring these investments to ensure that we help our investors achieve the two most important goals. One is to ensure that they obtain their permanent green card, and number two is to ensure capital repayment at the end of the day. Over the past 20 years, we have raised more than 3.7 billion in EB-5 funds across 75 projects, out of which 52 projects have already reached their investment maturity, and we have repaid in full a total of $2.5 billion. Our repayment track record is really what sets Can-Am apart from other regional centers. At Can-Am, we are a fully regulated financial service firm. So, EB-5 is a very unique investment. It is considered a private security offering in the US. So we place strong emphasis in, being fully compliant with the regulators. We are both a FINRA registered broker-dealer as well as a SEC licensed investment advisor. This allows us to, advise investors both within the US and outside of the US in full compliance with the US securities law. When we talk about EB-5, this term regional centers come out a lot. So what does it actually mean? So regional center is basically a designation given by USCIS. So for a company like Can-Am, when we submit the application to USCIS, once approved, we are authorized to sponsor EB-5 projects within a specific geographic area. So in 2002, we actually established our very first regional center in Philadelphia in collaboration with the Economic Development Agency, PIDC. Right now, we have a total of 13 approved regional center designations covering more than 30 states in the US. This broad coverage allows us to select high-quality projects for investors. We are very proud of what we have achieved up to today, be it in terms of the number of green card issued or the amount of capital that we have repaid to our investors. It is the highest in the EB-5 industry. Our 2.5 billion repayment track record is more than the rest of the industry combined. And this strength of our track record isn't just based on internal reporting, but we actually submit all these petition approvals as well as bank remittance confirmation to a third-party independent accounting firm to perform an annual audit of all these figures to ensure full transparency within our investor community. One of the most common questions that we get from investors is what kind of projects actually qualify as an EB-5 project? So for Can-Am, we are an independent regional center. So essentially, we are an investment management firm. The projects that we put in front of our investors are not developed by us directly, but instead, we source and we select high-quality commercial projects in the US that meet with EB-5 program requirements, and most importantly, fulfill the job creation requirement through construction spending. Being in this industry for such a long time, we have actually built a wide network of project partners that we work very closely with to not only provide these high-quality projects, but also offer a wide variety of commercial projects across different sectors. We've worked with top-tier real estate developers, and one of them being Tishman Spire. We have completed 3 projects with them already, and we had a recent project repayment celebration earlier this year. It is the Spiral Building in New York. We also work a lot with Fortune 500 companies like Time Warner, Comcast, and also very prestigious investment firms like Fortress and Searchlight that invest heavily in industrial, transportation, and energy sectors. We also collaborate with a lot of public agencies as well as universities to build student housing and science and medical labs. So the kind of projects that we have are very diverse, and that also makes Can-Am very different from a lot of other regional centers. So after the EB-5 program got reauthorized in 2022, we have completed fundraising for 14 projects, and out of which 12 of them have already received the USCIS I-956F, which is the project approval. We have raised more than 950 million across 1,200 EB-5 investors, and these are actually some of the projects that we have done in the various sectors. So for the first one, this is a redevelopment project in Philadelphia called the Bellwether District, where EB-5 funds were used for the construction of a mixed-use industrial district that features a logistic hub and a science and innovation campus. In the past 2 years, we were also very big in the fiber broadband team. So in an effort to bridge the digital divide in the US, we actually collaborated with Consolidated Communication to support the deployment of fiber broadband networks across underserved as well as unserved areas of America. One of the most recent projects that we had completed was that we have finished fundraising for is a commercial real estate project. So this is in collaboration with Four Seasons to build a Four Seasons branded hotel and residences located in Telluride, Colorado. The project was exceptionally well received, and we were oversubscribed within just 1 month of its launch. So if you'd like to find out more about our current or upcoming projects, please feel free to reach out to Shalu and Henley & Partners, and we'd be happy to arrange a time to walk you through these projects in greater detail. With that, I will hand it back to you, Shalu.
Okay, thanks so much, Jess. But I just wanted to ask, perhaps you could just clarify for, the people who are attending today, if you could just talk about rural and high unemployment, because I think that has become one of the reasons. Rural is a project, a category that has actually come out because when the law was passed in 2022 under the Biden administration, with the Indians and the Chinese being the top 2 nationalities actually, applying for the EB-5, previously, without this rural category, some of them are actually waiting like 15, 20 years, correct me if I'm wrong. So perhaps you could just draw the distinction between rural and, high unemployment, and what are the advantages to it? Yeah.
Yes, Shalu, so you correctly pointed it out. So after the program was reauthorized in 2022, they are just basically, creating this new queue per se. So they created this reserve category where we have high unemployment projects and, the rural projects. So in the past, Indian-born and Chinese-born individuals and investors, they have to wait a very long time to get approvals and for their visas to be allocated to them. So they're actually facing, visa backlogs. But with this new queue per se, they are able to actually gain faster priority processing if they were to choose, rural projects. So that's why we are seeing the a surge in demand in rural projects, especially for Chinese and Indian-born individuals, because right now USCIS is being mandated to review all these projects, the rural projects, especially on a priority processing. So all these individuals are actually going towards, rural projects because they're able to secure their green card at a faster pace.
Okay, fantastic. And thank you for that. And I also just would like to just, ask you to go elaborate this point a little bit further, because as we understand, because of, as you are mentioning, the surge of demand for EB-5, right? Like what happens and when do you likely expect, whether the retrogression to start happening, and what should a client be doing right now? Just planning that in mind. I think very important to mention that also. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is definitely a lot of data out there in, online, and a lot of, analysis that has been coming out. So the demand for, rural, or be it rural or high employment project, is very, very high. The demand for EB-5 program is very high right now. So the applications that we are seeing, at the end of the day, we are expecting maybe a backlog situation, especially for Chinese and Indian born individuals will come through sometime end of this year or even early next year. So really right now, we actually advise our clients that right now is kind of like the golden period for you to, make that decision, so that you actually go into the queue and start that kickstart that whole immigration timeline.
Yes, I think that is something very, very important that, I would like to highlight it to everyone, is that especially if you are someone who is an Indian or a Chinese born in China or India respectively, a lot of people think that, oh, this law is till 2027 or 2026, the grandfather provision. I have plenty of time, but I always tell the client, this is something you really need to think about, because once backlog starts to happen, then you will not be able to do this, and then you would be stuck in that entire queue, and the processing times would just go, pretty haywire. And that's why, we are seeing such good response of the approval rates coming through. Like, as I mentioned, two of my clients got their approval in 7 months, because they, first of all, they invested into a rural project, but also because, at Henley and Partners, we work with experts like Canem and George, who I'm going to be introducing, right, to really handhold the client through every stage of their EB-5 journey. And with that, I really want to thank you, Jessica, right? And I would like
Thank
to
you, Shalu.
Yes, I would like to introduce you to the next speaker. George Gainey is actually an immigration attorney. He has his own law firm, Gainey Law, and he's someone that, Henley and Partners works very closely with. I actually have worked with him on a number of client cases, and, we're very, very happy to actually for him to share more on the current immigration, view in terms of EB-5 context. George?
Yeah, thanks so much, Shalu. Great to be here. Thank you, as always, for the very kind invitation to be here with you and your clients today, and to share the virtual stage with Jess of Can-Am as well. Love working with with you and Jess on these matters. Just making sure everyone can see my screen. Yes. Okay. So,
Yeah, we can.
Great. My name is George Gainey. I'm an immigration attorney. I have my own law practice. We are a private client U.S. immigration law firm based in Washington, D.C. We really like working closely with private clients, their advisors, and family members to navigate, the complexities of U.S. immigration law, whether that's pursuing, a student, work, or investment immigration option. Immigration is super personal and can be very, very complex. There's lots of policy shifts, geopolitical changes in this day and age. And so now is probably a good time to just take a step back, take a look at U.S. immigration in 2025, and try to unpack, current trends, particularly as they apply to our clients' kids who are, international students in the United States. Take a look at, the famous Trump/gold card, and look at EB-5, as Jess mentioned, as a solid alternative that's actually on the books. So here's just a quick roadmap of what we can discuss today. Like I said, student visa issues, the gold card proposal, which is,
Sorry,
always.
George, can I just trouble you? Could you change it to a full screen? Would that be possible?
Oh, sure. Is that not the?
It's not. It's.
How's that?
Yeah, much better. Much better.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, you saw all my notes there, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about the gold card proposal, which is always 2 weeks away. Look at, existing gold card infrastructure that could be taken advantage of, but probably won't. What could and should a gold card actual proposal take? Compare it versus EB-5, and then look at EB-5 requirements and an overview in a little bit more detail. So this is just to talk about, this is a little I mean, things are changing so quickly, and the news cycle is so intense these days, particularly as it applies to students in the United States. But just to sort of contextualize student visa issues. So, who was having their student visa revoked? Who was having their SEVIS record cancel? This was maybe like a month or two back. And so this is, the number of international students in the United States here on the right. We can see that there's, just shy of 1.2 million international students in the US, which is a very large number. And the number of students who are actually affected by these sort of timely SEVIS cancellations, student visa revocations, Harvard-related policy initiatives, Gaza protest initiatives, and the like. So that's not to minimize the impact that having your SEVIS record canceled or having your student visa revoked has on an individual. It's just to say that the number of individuals as compared to the total mass of international students was relatively low. These points here are probably more salient for all students. So the first is that there's a proposed regulation, it's under final review, that would get rid of something called duration of status for international students, and it would replace something called duration of status with fixed end dates, meaning that instead of having carte blanche to remain in the United States as long as you maintain your student visa status, an international student would be given a fixed date after which they either need to leave the US and return or apply for an extension of their status. That's going to be complicated because it's going to be something that international students will need to keep an eye on. They'll need to calendar and track that date very closely so that they don't run into any immigration penalties. And it'll also make it a little more cumbersome for them to switch onto something like OPT or CPT, or if they want to continue on, in a master's program, they'll need to actually take steps on the immigration side to deal with that. Maybe even going and applying for a new visa to be printed in their passport. And this will almost certainly go through this proposed regulation to get rid of duration of status for F1 international students. Social media screening will also continue. That's pretty intense. We've had, clients go in for their student visa interviews, and everything needs to be set to public. We need to disclose any and all social media handles. So that's something that will continue for individuals on student visas or applying for student visas. And then another kind of important piece of news is that the USCIS director was confirmed by the Senate yesterday. That's Joe Edlow. And so, historically, Director Edlow has expressed interest in restricting something called optional practical training, which is OPT, with probably an impact on the STEM extension, meaning that, as OPT stands, after you complete a degree, get 1 year of optional practical training. And if your major is in a STEM field, you get a 2-year extension of that. So that is probably going to go away, as will something called Day 1 CPT. Day 1 CPT is where you study in a master's program, and on the first day of starting that program, you're given work authorization. So sometimes that's used as a way to work in the United States while you're completing a master's degree, with the focus on working. So those two things will most likely go away. As I mentioned earlier, change of duration of status to an actual fixed end date for student visa holders in the United States. And then finally, more modification of H-1B regulations to kind of like favor higher paying positions in the selection process. That will impact students because it'll make it more difficult for them to find an employer to actually sponsor them for the H-1B visa. So just in summation, I think sort of like the more headline, sort of attention-grabbing topics, the Gaza protests, SEVIS cancellations, student visa revocations, those are more limited in scope. these issues that are a little more technical in nature, they'll have a much bigger impact on that larger, wider swath of international students. So long story short, being an international student will not be as easy as it was in the past, and getting a job after graduation probably won't be as easy as maybe it was in the past. So now we can talk about the gold card proposal, sort of shifting very radically from, student visas to the gold card, but that's, how things are in this day and age. This is the gold card proposal. So we'll talk about the feature, investment amount, how the funds are used and the like. So this is a $5 million payment directly to the US government, intended to reduce the national debt, no job creation or preservation requirement. Allegedly, it'll provide a pathway to US citizenship. Tax implications, very important. Tax on US income, foreign income not taxed. For estate tax purposes, the current rules apply, so it's domicile based. And then the program status, it was a proposed plan announced in February of 2025. All of this information is information that anyone can obtain just by consuming like the media, any type of media. This is all announced in sort of impromptu press conferences, podcast appearances. So we're just sort of like taking what is out there, what the Trump administration has said publicly about the Trump/gold card proposal, and putting it here. But this is just public facing information. There's nothing formal, no actual proposed rule, no actual proposed policy, legislation, anything. So that this is just what we know, and we meaning the collective we. There is some existing infrastructure for the gold card proposal, meaning that there's an account that the U.S. Treasury Department controls, and it's explicitly in place for gifts to reduce the public debt. So if the gold/Trump card proposal were to, spring into being, this is infrastructure that already exists that could be taken advantage of to facilitate investments, gifts basically to the United States for gold card purposes. So what could the gold card proposal take? It could take, policies and actual implementation done in an informal way. This is highly unlikely, particularly because of the tax element. So you'll remember when we talked about, what the framework is for the proposal, the big motivating factor for lots of people as to why they would even think about the gold card, why they would think about making a $5 million one-time payment to the US federal government, would be in exchange for exemption from tax on their global income. And that is very difficult to do, maybe impossible to do without legislation. So take all of this with a grain of salt. This is what it could take to implement the gold/Trump card proposal. This is what it should take. So legislation would need to be introduced and passed by Congress. You have to, hash it out in the legislative process, any controversies like vetting, tax exemptions. A government agency would need to be designated to administer the program. That agency would need to create forms. They would need to hire and train adjudicators to process applications. There need to be formal and informal rules, security vetting protocols developed, and then the program could be launched publicly, accepting applications. So there was a website that was launched, under the Department of Commerce and the Department of Treasury that maybe everyone has seen. You can, enter your information, and you're basically like put on some kind of wait list, it sounds like. But very, very importantly, there was a very large piece of legislation that was passed just before, on the 4th of July, was passed on the 3rd of July, and it was signed into law on the 4th of July. And that legislation is really where this gold card proposal would have been. There were big reforms to the Internal Revenue Code, the IRC, and that would have been where particularly the tax element of the Trump/gold card would have been changed and brought into law, and that didn't happen. So the likelihood that it does happen, I think, is very low. So even though this is 2 weeks away, it's preternaturally, 2 weeks away, take that with a very large grain of salt. I think it's safe to say that this won't be happening anytime in the near future, again, because of that tax element. On the immigration side, there's probably a way to implement this, but if there are no tax benefits, then the individuals who would be interested in this, there's not really a big public for that, because the EB-5 actually does exist. That's on the books, as Jess mentioned. It's an $800,000 investment, so it's contemplated to come back to the client after 5 to 7 years. There's a requirement to create or preserve at least 10 new full-time jobs in the United States. It's green card status with a pathway for U.S. citizenship. You are subject to U.S. taxation on your worldwide income. And it's been on the books since 1990, and it's been reauthorized through September of 2027. Importantly, as Jess mentioned, there's a grandfathering clause that expires in September of 2026. So we'll see like a big push into EB-5 from now until September of next year, because people will want to get in and have the benefit of that grandfathering clause. Just one note on the U.S. taxation on worldwide income. There's planning that can be done around that. And Shalu works with some great professionals who can help clients with that. So if the two options are to sit on the sideline and wait for the gold card to come into being, which the likelihood of that is de minimis, or look at something that's actually real, that actually does exist, that clients can take advantage of and engage in a little bit of planning. In a perfect universe, there would probably be, a mix of EB-5, which actually does exist, and some of the tax, benefits of the gold card. But some of that can be mitigated with careful planning. And that's what all clients end up doing when they do go through EB-5. So just to speak a little bit more about EB-5 requirements, two very basic seeming requirements: investment of $800,000 and the creation of 10 new full-time jobs in the United States. The investment of $800,000, the key here is to demonstrate the lawful source of funds. So the investment itself, where the client gets the liquidity from to actually make the investment, doesn't matter as long as it's from a lawful source. So it can be loaned to the client, it can be gifted to the client, it can be from income, savings, dividend from a closely held business, sale of real property, drawing down on a line of credit secured by, portfolio. Doesn't matter as long as we can prove lawful source of funds. So again, that's the $800,000 investment. The creation of 10 new full-time jobs happens through, I would say 9 times out of 10 for our clients, a regional center. So Jess is from Can-Am, which is a very highly thought of and well-respected regional center in the United States. And what the regional center does is it pools investment from disparate individuals who are seeking a green card through EB-5. And because they have a license from the federal government, they're able to count jobs that have been created indirectly in the United States. So that allows them to, 9 times out of 10, lend funds to a third party who will develop some type of asset in the United States. And just through that construction, just through that development of that asset, that's how the jobs are created. So the federal government, the immigration agencies don't go out to a construction site and count, how many people are working there. The regional center, in this case Can-Am, hires an economist, a specialized economist, to conduct an econometric study. And that study relies on an input-output model. And long story short, you say, we're going to spend this much capital on this type of activity. How many jobs is that going to render us in this, geographic area of the United States? And that's where the job creation actually happens. So it's a completely passive investment for our clients. That's very attractive for parents who have children on student visas in the United States. If they want their kids to obtain the green card and they don't want to, participate in the green card, very attractive, because it means their kids, who are just completing their degrees maybe, or who are even starting college in the United States aren't going to have to go out and hire people. They're not going to depend on an employer to sponsor them for a green card. They're really going to be, set up for success from an immigration standpoint once they do graduate. It's also very attractive to our parent clients who, want to participate and obtain a green card themselves, because it means that they're not going to have to do anything in the United States in terms of creating jobs or, demonstrating their subjective capability to, add to the U.S. Economy. They do their work with Shalu, their immigration attorney, and the regional center on the front end, and then it's a completely passive option for them on the back end. Just a quick note on processing. This is very interesting for international students in the United States. They are able to complete their entire green card process from inside the United States, meaning that they can complete the petition and application phases at the same time. And while they're waiting for their green card to be issued, they can remain inside the United States. They can work in the United States without restriction, and they can travel in and out of the United States with travel authorization. So this is called adjustment of status through a concurrent filing. This is very interesting because that means that the client basically has all the upside of the green card without actually having the green card in their hand yet. And in the face of pending visa backlogs for clients who are born in India or China, that's even more enticing, because it means that even though it might take 3, 4, 5 years for my green card to be issued, during that time, I'll be able to live in the US, work, and travel in and out of the US as though I were a lawful permanent resident, so long as I get my filing done before the backlog hits. If you don't go through adjustment of status, meaning if you're not in the United States with a visa already, you just go through something called consular processing. That's also a pretty quick process these days. So you file your visa petition, you wait for it to be approved, and then you complete a medical exam, background checks, biographic documentation, et cetera, at a US consulate or embassy abroad. So each client either goes through consular processing or something called adjustment of status. Adjustment of status being very interesting for those clients who are already in the US or with a student visa or some type of work-related visa. Just to try to bring everything together as to how EB-5, works and looks. The two main requirements, again, are an $800,000 investment, creation of 10 new full-time jobs in the United States. The client makes an $800,000 investment into an entity, special purpose vehicle. That special purpose vehicle is sponsored or controlled by a regional center. The regional center uses that pooled capital to make a loan to a third party who's going to develop some type of real asset in the United States. They conduct an econometric study to demonstrate how many indirect and induced jobs are going to be created in a local economy, just by that capital being spent on construction-related activities 9 times out of 10. And because the investment has happened and the 10 new full-time jobs will be created, that renders us a nice, fresh green card in the United States. We're located in Washington, D.C. We're about a mile north of the White House. It doesn't mean that we can walk into the Oval Office and pick up immigration documents on behalf of our clients, but it does help to be in D.C. And work with people who used to be in the government, and they still have great relationships and great insights as to how things actually work in the administration of U.S. immigration law. Thanks very much. That's it from my side. I'm going to stop sharing now.
Okay, great.
Turn it back over to you, Shalu.
Yes, thank you so much, George. I think that was an excellent, presentation. Really, drove some very important topics. But there are two points that I really want to emphasize, which actually George mentioned, and I just want to share it in light of what I go through with my clients, because I think it's very important for me to, relate it back to my dealings with my clients, real life cases. So I think one of the biggest thing is student visa. I think, the gold card is something that came out with a lot of fanfare, but it looks like it's going to be very, very hard for Trump to actually pull it through for legislation, because honestly, the only exciting thing about the gold card is really the global tax. where especially an ultra high net worth client, it would be very appealing for them, considering they would not have to be subjected to global tax and they would only be paying tax in the US. So I feel that the gold card is something we just have to wait and see. I mean, but I think really the crux of the matter that I actually want to highlight is student visa, especially, with Trump targeting international students. I think that has become a very, very important topic for a lot of parents that I'm dealing with. And I think it has become a very, very important topic simply because in the past, as George has mentioned, people, they go on a student visa. They think that after that, they will just look for a job. And it has been, possible for people in the past, through H-1B or lottery system, whatever. But now it's almost next to impossible to go through that route. And for simple reasons, because of the way how international students are being, approached, honestly, with the social media scrutiny and all. So I really, really think at the end of the day, when I have clients, especially with children, and some of them who are actually already in the US, right? The EB-5 is the best solution. Honestly, it's legislation, it is law, and it is something that will give the parents a peace of mind. And I actually have my clients' children who are like 18 years old who tell me, it is extremely even competitive for internships. Let's even forget about jobs after graduation. Internships are extremely competitive. And the moment they have to actually mention that they don't require any company sponsorship, that is extremely powerful, and then you are actually vying for that position like a US citizen. And I've gone to see a lot of my clients' children get their dream internships and jobs. So I think that is something I really, really want to, highlight too. And, there is consular processing and there is, concurrent adjustment of status. So I've seen a lot of my clients' children who actually live in the United States take advantage of this. Again, bearing in mind, you should do it when, while you still can. As I mentioned, if you're particularly a Chinese or Indian born in your respective countries, then it is really time to actually take action. And I think that is something I just wanted to highlight. So that's actually a very, very important part. Another point that I actually wanted to mention is I think a lot of people have this misconception that the moment that they, US, they take a green card, they're subjected to global tax and it's everything. I think that is really the furthest from the truth, because at Henley and Partners, we really work with the best tax and legacy specialists who can actually, plan a way for the client to actually have greater tax optimization in terms of estate tax, in terms of gift tax. So, I've actually worked with, clients in this, and we reach out to, the best tax and legacy planning specialists. So I really want to give people that idea that, please do not be scared that the moment that you think you get a green card and then you are subjected everything to global tax, you'll be surprised at how much with good planning, a lot can be optimized for the client. So that is something I really wanted to, just drive home the point. So I hope you have got a better idea today. And if I could just answer this particular question that has been asked, is the invested amount get back? If so, how and when and conditions? I have a 10-year tourist visa. Can I apply for this? George, if you could kindly answer this, like the gentleman has a 10-year tourist visa.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. If you have a tourist visa, that won't necessarily have, that doesn't mean, yes, you can apply for EB-5. The question for you will be whether you go through consular processing or, if you apply for adjustment of status. I think probably the best route, just not knowing anything else, would to be going through consular processing. So that whole process would take maybe a year and a half, I would say. The question about whether I get my investment back, if so, how, when, and with what conditions, that'll depend on the particular offering. So these are all, private offerings in the United States. You'll get a big stack of disclosures and documents and contracts from the regional center for the particular project that you choose. And it'll depend on the actual project itself. Right now, there's some litigation as to, what the floor is, as to how long your investment needs to remain at risk. But suffice to say, at least 2 years. At least 2 years probably from when your investment is actually made available to the project. So when it leaves the escrow account of the regional center, of something called the NCE, and it goes out, it's actually, the loan is drawn down on and the funds go out towards a job creating activity. Today, that's probably the floor. The floor could be a little higher than that. But for today, contemplate that the minimum amount of time that your investment will be at risk will be about 2.5 years. It can obviously go beyond that depending on what the requirements of the project are. Maybe, I don't know, Jess, you want to chime in there?
Yeah. I think the standard projects, commercial projects that we invest in, usually the investment term is about 4 to 6 years, because for a commercial viable project to take off, they also need time to stabilize and for us to get refinancing to have our funds repaid back to our investors. So I would say the standard loan term for our projects that we do in CanAm here is about 4 to 6 years. Yeah.
Okay. So that's great. And Jess, I would just ask you to just share about the current projects that you have actually done in the past, right? Period be generally about 4 to 6 years, most of this one. And could you just draw
That's
the
right.
connection between, how the application is the processing time is actually very, very different from the project loan maturity. Could you just, draw that distinction for the people who are at this webinar?
Right. So there is basically two timelines that, investors will need to, walk through. So the first timeline is your immigration timeline. So that's when you engage an attorney, George, for in this case, and a very experienced immigration attorney help you to clear out your source of funds, make sure that your funds are legally sourced. Once he gives you the green light to make your investments, at the same time, you choose a project that you want to invest in. So for example, you like a project that CanAm is offering right now. And, George has cleared that, you're able to make that investment into the project. That's when, you can file your first petition. That's the application for a conditional green card. So that kickstarts your immigration timeline. What's running in parallel is your investment timeline. So as a regional center, we pool the investments together into a limited partnership. So only when we close the loan with the project borrowers, we disperse the first tranche of funds to them. That kickstart everybody's, all the investors invested in this limited partnership investment term. So that's when they start the project loan term. So these are the two timelines that runs in parallel.
Yes. So just for the gentleman who asked the question, right? Yeah, you would actually get your funds back, right? Once the loan matures. Am I right, Jess? Yeah.
That's right.
Right. And the funds are actually returned back to the investor with a certain minimum investment. Could you just touch on the minimum investment these projects also carry? Yeah.
Oh, you mean the interest that this investment carries?
That's right.
The
Yes.
project, it really depends on the project specific. So I would say, CanAm, we are very conservative. So how we actually attract very high quality, good projects is we offer very attractive loan interest to all these project borrowers. So the interest that we charge these project borrowers are very low. So which is why the interest that is being carried on, that is passed on to investors will be very low, about maybe ranging from 0.25% to maximum 1% per year per annum.
Yes.
So this is the interest that, investors will look to receive.
All right. So, I hope that, everybody has got a better idea of how actually an EB-5 application will work. But having said that, it's a lot of information to digest. I can completely understand that. But, please feel free to reach out to me. I will be very happy to actually discuss your individual case. Basically, we really, really sit with the client and really understand the client's motivation to do EB-5, especially, if it involves your children and planning for them. As I mentioned to you, Henley, we do everything from the education, the EB-5 application process, working with tax planners, working with legacy specialists. So we are here to help you through every, step of your EB-5 journey. So please feel free to reach out. I hope you actually have got a better understanding of the program. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jessica. Thank you so much, George, for your time.
Thank you so much, Shalu.
Thank you, everyone, for actually making some time to actually join us today. Thank you so much. Yeah.